The COVID-19 pandemic has brought many changes that especially impact schools and learning. Schools and districts are all taking different approaches to maintain public health while still providing education. Navigating these changes to your students' education can be challenging. In the first part of this two-part video series, we will be addressing 3 common COVID-19 education questions. Is my student still entitled to a free and appropriate public education during the COVID-19 pandemic? What should I do if distance learning isn't working for my student? What should I do if my student can't wear a mask? If you have questions about dispute resolution in the education system, please check with our second video, What should I do if there's a dispute about my student's education? The Department of Education has clarified that the obligation of local school districts to provide a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE, to students with disabilities is not suspended during the COVID-19 pandemic, even if public health concerns necessitate some change to the format or delivery of education services. The only situation in which a district is not required to provide FAPE due to the pandemic is if it has temporarily stopped providing education services to any of its students. However, in such a situation, the school may be nonetheless required to provide compensatory education services to make up for the time during which FAPE was not made available after school returns to normal operation. Although the COVID-19 pandemic presents a host of unique challenges to local school districts in determining how to provide FAPE to students with disabilities, the obligation to provide FAPE has not changed. Here are some points to keep in mind when making adjustments to a student's individualized education program to reflect changes to the service delivery model. Students are still entitled to receive all of the services listed in their IEP, even if distance learning has been implemented, though the means by which this will be delivered may differ. Do not agree to remove any IEP services simply because the school claims it is not currently possible to provide them. If you disagree with the school's plan, inform the school of your objections and request an IEP team meeting in writing. For many students with disabilities, distance learning may simply not be an effective option. If you are concerned that your student with a disability is not receiving FAPE because their service delivery has been impacted by COVID-19, they may be eligible for compensatory education to make up for that time. For parents who feel that their students are not receiving FAPE during the pandemic, here are some tips to increase the likelihood that compensatory services will be provided. Keep track of which IEP services are not being provided and which are being provided in a different manner. Gather information on the student's present levels of performance by documenting the student's progress on IEP goals. Take notes on how the student continues to perform in each area of concern, for example, academic, social, behavioral. This data can be used to track regression that occurs during school closures and therefore will be helpful to determine if compensatory education should be provided. When school resumes normal operation, request an educational evaluation of the student's current needs to address any identified gaps in services and regression relative to the student's goals. Lastly, certain disabilities may make it difficult or impossible for a student to wear a mask in public school buildings as required by state guidelines, and these students may be able to request an exemption directly from the local school district. In some cases, individuals will still be required to wear a face shield or other alternative protective equipment. What should I do if my student can't wear a mask? If you need to request an accommodation for your student, make sure to make accommodation requests in writing and request a written response. Note the date the request was received and when it was granted or denied, in order to keep a full record of any relevant correspondence. There are some requirements to know if your student is eligible for an exemption. Individuals who may be eligible for an exemption include individuals with a medical condition, mental health condition, or disability that prevents wearing a face mask, including those with medical conditions for whom wearing a mask could cause harm or dangerously obstruct breathing or may otherwise be unable to remove a face mask without assistance, as well as individuals engaged in a method of communication which requires the mouth to be visible, which includes individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, and those who are currently communicating or working with such individuals, and individuals who have an IEP under the IDEA which necessitates an exemption from a mask requirement. If you have more questions regarding your student with a disability, you can access our library of fact sheets and self-advocacy guides at disabilitylawcenter.org/resources-topic. You can also contact us directly via our online contact form or by phone at 800-662-9080. The DLC services are available throughout Utah and free of charge.